The ancient crystal spires of the Galactic Council chambers hummed with an energy that had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. High above the swirling storms of Terminus Prime, 7 representatives from the most powerful species in the galaxy gathered around a holographic display, showing a small blue world at the edge of known space. Ambassador Rilak adjusted his translation device and cleared his throat with a sound like grinding metal. His species had conquered 43 star systems through careful planning and overwhelming force. Today's meeting concerned a planet called Earth, inhabited by creatures that called themselves humans. The intelligence reports are troubling. Rilak began, his 4 eyes scanning the data streams floating before him. These humans have spread to 17 worlds in just 50 Earth years. Most species take 3 centuries to achieve such expansion. Council leader Vorth leaned back in his floating chair, his tentacles moving in patterns that indicated mild amusement. The Vorthak had ruled the galactic core for over 2,000 years, and no species had ever challenged their authority for long. 17 primitive colonies hardly constitute a threat to our dominion. What is their military capability? Minimal, according to our scouts, Rilak replied, though uncertainty colored his translated words. They possess basic energy weapons and metal ships. Their technology appears crude compared to our standards. However, there are anomalies in our sensor readings. Military advisor Kresh stepped forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the holographic Earth. The Krashani were legendary for their tactical brilliance, having crushed the last major rebellion 300 years ago. Our deep space monitors detected unusual energy signatures from their industrial worlds. The patterns are unlike anything in our databases. Vorth's tentacles stopped moving. In 2 millennia of galactic leadership, he had learned to pay attention when patterns emerged that their vast knowledge banks could not explain. Elaborate. The humans appear to be mining asteroids at an impossible rate, Kresh continued. Their energy consumption has increased by 4,000% in the last decade. Either they are incredibly wasteful, or they are building something we cannot identify. Science Coordinator Thex activated a secondary display showing human space traffic. Their ships move in formation patterns that suggest military training, yet they claim to be civilian vessels. When our diplomatic envoys attempted to establish contact according to standard protocols, the humans refused to acknowledge our authority over contested sectors. The 7 council members exchanged glances that spoke of shared concern. In their experience, species that refused to acknowledge galactic authority fell into 2 categories: those too primitive to understand the consequences, and those powerful enough to ignore them. The humans appeared to be neither. What was their exact response to our sovereignty claims? Vorth asked. Vex manipulated the hologram to display a recorded message. A human male with graying hair appeared, wearing a simple uniform without obvious rank insignia. When he spoke, his voice carried a confidence that made several council members shift uncomfortably. To the representatives of the Galactic Council, the human had said, looking directly into the camera with steady brown eyes, humanity appreciates your interest in establishing diplomatic relations. However, we do not recognize any authority over human expansion into unclaimed space. Our colonies will continue to grow according to our own timeline and objectives. We hope this position is understood and respected. The message ended with the human's slight nod, as if he were concluding a routine business meeting rather than defying the most powerful political entity in the galaxy. Silence filled the chamber for several moments. Finally, Trade Representative Z spoke in his species' characteristic whistle song. The economic implications concern me more than their military posture. Human trade networks are disrupting established shipping routes. Several minor species have begun requesting human-manufactured goods instead of our products. Impossible, Vorth declared. Human technology is centuries behind our most basic implementations. That is what our reports indicate, Flix agreed. Yet human goods are appearing in markets across 12 sectors. Their tools last longer, their computers process faster, and their materials demonstrate properties our scientists cannot replicate. Defense Coordinator Quinn activated his combat analysis systems. I recommend immediate action. History shows that species who challenge Council authority in their early expansion phase become exponentially more dangerous if allowed to develop unchecked. The humans should be contained now before they become a genuine threat. Kresh nodded his massive head. A demonstration of force would suffice. 300 ships should overwhelm their defenses while leaving their infrastructure intact for integration into our systems, Vorth considered the recommendation. The Galactic Council had maintained peace and order for 2 millennia through a simple principle: overwhelming force applied quickly to prevent larger conflicts. Species that learned their place in the galactic hierarchy early typically became valuable contributors to civilization. Those that refused integration were removed. The humans have shown no hostile intent, cultural analyst Marin observed. Perhaps negotiation would prove more effective than military action. They refused our diplomatic overtures, Rillet countered. Their expansion continues despite our warnings. Military intervention appears to be the only language they will understand. Economic. Projections filled the holographic display as Trade Representative Slicks shared his analysis. Human expansion threatens 17 established trade routes. If their growth continues at current rates, they will control 43 systems within a century. The economic disruption could destabilize the entire galactic market. Vorth's tentacles began moving in the complex patterns that indicated deep thought. The Galactic Council had faced similar challenges before, always with the same resolution. Young species needed to learn their place in the established order. Those who learned survived and prospered. Those who refused learned through more direct methods. The decision is before us, Vorth announced. We can allow human expansion to continue unchecked, potentially destabilizing galactic civilization as we know it. Or we can demonstrate the consequences of defying Council authority. One by one, the 7 representatives voted. The decision was unanimous. Military Advisor Kresh will coordinate the operation, Vorth declared. 300 ships should provide adequate demonstration without causing unnecessary destruction. The goal is compliance, not annihilation. Kresh saluted in the manner of his species. The expedition will depart within 72 hours. Estimated time to human space, 14 standard days. As the council session concluded, none of the representatives noticed the subtle energy fluctuations that had been recording their every word. Deep in space, monitoring stations that appeared to be simple asteroid mining operations had been tracking Galactic Council communications for over 50 years. On Earth, in a facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean, alarms began sounding as the intercepted transmission reached human intelligence networks. The war humanity had been preparing for was finally beginning. Admiral Kresh studied the tactical display showing the Sol system, spread before his fleet like a 3-dimensional map of inevitable victory. 300 of the galaxy's most advanced warships hung in perfect formation at the edge of human space. Their weapons charged and shields at maximum power, the human homeworld appeared exactly as intelligence reports had described. A small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, surrounded by the primitive infrastructure of a barely spacefaring civilization. Kresh's tactical computers identified several dozen human vessels fleeing toward the outer planets, their engines leaving bright trails against the darkness of space. "Cowards!" muttered Captain Yule from the bridge of the destroyer Vengeance. They abandoned their homeworld at the first sign of superior force. Kresh was not so certain. His species had survived for millennia by never underestimating an opponent, regardless of apparent technological disadvantages. The fleeing human ships moved with precision that suggested discipline rather than panic. Communications Officer Tarm activated the fleet's broadcasting systems. "Admiral, we are ready to transmit surrender demands on all human frequencies." "Proceed," Kresh ordered, though something about the tactical situation troubled him. The humans had positioned monitoring stations throughout their solar system, yet none had attempted to hail the approaching fleet. Most species either tried to communicate or immediately began firing. The humans were doing neither. The surrender demand echoed across human space in 17 different languages, translated by the galaxy's most sophisticated linguistic computers. Attention, human civilization. You have violated Galactic Council territorial agreements by expanding into restricted sectors without authorization. Surrender immediately and prepare for integration into the Galactic Order. Resistance will result in the destruction of your military assets and the occupation of your worlds. For several minutes, only silence answered the transmission. Then a single human voice responded on an open channel, speaking in clear, unaccented Galactic Standard. This is Tom Bradley, commanding the Earth Defense Force vessel Defiance. Your message has been received and considered. Earth's response is simple. We stand. If you want our worlds, come and take them. Kresh felt his warrior instincts stir at the human's tone. There was no fear in Bradley's voice, no attempt at negotiation or delay. The human spoke like a soldier who had already chosen death over surrender. Scan the fleeing vessels, Kresh ordered. I want to know exactly what we're facing. Science Officer Velm worked quickly at his station, directing the fleet's sensor arrays toward the retreating human ships. Admiral, the readings are confusing. These vessels appear to be civilian transports, but their engine signatures suggest military-grade propulsion systems. Weapons? Minimal visible armament, but heavy shielding. The ships are small compared to our standards, but they move with unusual agility. Kresh studied the tactical display more carefully. The fleeing human vessels were not running randomly toward the outer planets. They were taking positions at specific coordinates, forming a pattern that looked almost like evasive maneuvers. Kresh shouted, but his warning came too late. The human vessels that had appeared to be fleeing suddenly reversed course, their small fighters moving with impossible speed and precision. What Kresh had mistaken for retreat was actually deployment, and the humans had used his fleet's own arrival time to position themselves perfectly. The first wave of human fighters struck the Galactic Fleet's outer perimeter with weapons that defied every tactical manual in Kresh's library. Instead of the energy beams or projectile weapons his ships were designed to counter, the human weapons seemed to reach into space itself and twist it. The destroyer Evening Star simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded, but gone as if it had never been built. Where a massive warship had floated moments before, only empty space remained. Report, Kresh demanded as alarms filled his bridge. Unknown weapon type, Velm replied, his voice tight with fear. The target ship didn't explode or break apart, it just stopped existing. Our sensors show no debris, no energy signature. Nothing? More human fighters swarmed around the Galactic Fleet, their pilots executing maneuvers that should have killed any biological crew. They pulled turns at accelerations that would liquefy most known species, yet they maintained perfect formation and accuracy. How are they surviving those forces? Captain Yule demanded over the communication link. Kresh had no answer. His own pilots, among the best in the galaxy, could barely track the human movements, let alone counter them. The humans fought like machines, but with creativity and adaptability that no artificial intelligence had ever demonstrated. The human ship Defiance approached the Galactic Fleet center, its weapon systems powering up. The vessel was barely 1/10 the size of Kresh's flagship, yet it moved with the confidence of a predator approaching wounded prey. Open fire on that ship, Kresh ordered. All weapons maximum power. Energy beams that could crack the crust of a planet converged on the small human vessel. For a moment, Kresh thought the battle was over. Then the energy dissipated harmlessly against shields that seemed to absorb rather than deflect the incoming fire. Bradley's voice came over the communication channel again, now carrying a tone of grim satisfaction. Your turn. The Defiance fired a single shot from its main weapon. The beam struck Kresh's flagship dead center, and for an instant the Admiral felt the universe itself twist around him. Reality bent, atomic bonds dissolved, and the massive dreadnought that had been his home for 30 years began to unravel. At the molecular level, emergency systems activated, sealing the bridge section as the rest of the ship simply faded away. Kresh found himself in a command pod floating in space, watching his fleet die around him in ways that violated every law of physics he understood. The human fighters moved through the galactic formation like predators through a herd, their weapons reaching out to touch ship after ship with that same impossible energy. Each target died the same way, not destroyed, but erased from existence as if the universe had forgotten they were ever there. "Admiral," Communications Officer Tarm reported. "From his own escape pod, we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld." Tom Bradley's image appeared on the emergency display, and Kresh realized with growing horror that the human looked calm, almost bored. This was not a desperate last stand or a lucky victory, this was routine. "Admiral Kresh of the Galactic Council." "Fleet," Bradley said, consulting what appeared to be a standard military briefing. "Your surrender is now requested. Power down your remaining weapons and prepare to be taken into custody." "How?" Kresh managed to ask. "How do you possess such weapons?" "Our intelligence indicated primitive technology." Bradley smiled, and the expression was not reassuring. "Admiral, you've made the same mistake that every aggressor makes when they look at humanity. You saw what we wanted you to see." The tactical display showed the true scope of the disaster. Of 300 ships that had entered human space, fewer than 30 remained intact. The survivors floated powerless in space, their crews rescued by human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. "Your species will learn," Bradley continued, "that humans have a simple philosophy when it comes to survival. We prepare for the worst possible scenario, then we prepare for something worse than that." Kresh watched as more human ships emerged from concealment throughout the solar system. Hidden bases on asteroids revealed themselves, weapons platforms that had been disguised as mining equipment powered up, and the human moon itself began to open like a flower, revealing defenses that could have held off 10 times the force he had brought. This was a trap, Kresh realized. "No, Admiral," Bradley corrected. "This was a test. We needed to know what we were facing before we began the real war." "Real war?" Bradley's expression grew serious. "You came here to demonstrate the consequences of defying the Galactic Council. Consider the lesson learned. Now we're going to demonstrate the consequences of threatening humanity." The communication ended, leaving Kresh floating in space surrounded by the wreckage of galactic superiority. Around him, human rescue ships moved with efficient precision, collecting survivors and salvaging technology. As his pod was pulled into the cargo bay of a human vessel, Kresh realized that everything the Galactic Council thought they knew about warfare was about to change. Deep beneath the surface of Luna, Commander Lisa Grant watched the aftermath of the battle through a dozen different camera feeds while her staff coordinated the largest military operation in human history. The moon's command center stretched for kilometers in every direction, its walls lined with tactical displays showing not just the Sol system but star maps covering half the galaxy. "Casualty report," Grant ordered, though she already knew the numbers would be minimal. Humanity had spent 50 years preparing for this day, and every simulation had predicted overwhelming victory against any fleet the Galactic Council could assemble. "0 fatalities, 14 minor injuries," reported Lieutenant Davis, his voice carrying the disbelief that still colored every conversation about the battle. "Admiral Kresh's remaining ships are secured. We're processing nearly 8,000 prisoners." Grant nodded, her attention focused on the larger strategic picture. The Galactic Council's expeditionary force had been neutralized, but intelligence intercepts suggested more forces were already being mobilized. The aliens had mistaken humanity's opening move for their full capability. Status of the outer defenses? "All asteroid platforms are online and operational," replied Major Wong from his position at the tactical center. "The Saturn Ring installations report ready status. Deep space monitors show no incoming traffic." Grant studied the holographic display showing the Sol system as it truly existed, not the primitive backwater the Galactic Council had expected to find. Every asteroid larger than a building housed weapon systems or sensor arrays. The gas giants bristled with concealed military installations. Even the asteroid belt itself had been restructured over decades to create interlocking fields of fire that would channel any attacking force into predetermined kill zones. Captain Foster approached with a datapad containing intelligence extracted from captured alien systems. "Ma'am, we've cracked their communication protocols. The picture we're getting of Galactic Council capabilities is both better and worse than we expected." "Explain." "They have significantly more ships than our estimates suggested, spread across roughly 400 star systems. The good news is that most of their fleet consists of the same technology we just defeated. The bad news is that they have something called a world ender, and they're moving it toward our location." Grant felt a chill despite the command center's controlled environment. Human intelligence had detected references to planet-killing weapons in their surveillance of galactic communications, but confirmation that such a device was being deployed against Earth changed the entire strategic situation. Time to arrival? Based on their fastest recorded travel speeds, approximately 6 days. Grant activated her command authority and opened communication channels to every human installation throughout the solar system. "All stations, this is Luna Command. Operation Deep Strike is now authorized. Begin Phase 2 implementation." Throughout human space, installations that had remained hidden even during the recent battle began to reveal themselves. The planet Mars opened massive launch bays that had been disguised as geological formations, releasing ships that dwarfed anything the aliens had yet seen. Europa's ice shell cracked along predetermined lines, revealing manufacturing facilities that had been producing war materials for 3 decades. Most dramatically, Earth itself began to change. Continents shifted slightly as massive mechanical systems activated beneath the crust. The planet's magnetic field fluctuated as generators the size of cities came online, channeling power through networks that ran from core to surface. Phase 2 is active, reported Admiral Hayes from the Earth-based headquarters. "All defense grids are powered and ready. Offensive systems show green across the board." Grant watched as the true scope of human preparation revealed itself on the tactical displays. The Sol system was not just defended. It was weaponized. Every major celestial body had been converted into a component of the largest military installation ever constructed. "What are our prisoners' reactions to the deployment?" Grant asked. Captain Foster consulted his reports from the detention facilities. "Confusion turning to panic. Several of their officers have requested to speak with you directly. Admiral Kresh appears to be in some form of psychological shock. Bring him to the command center. It's time he understood exactly what his people have awakened." 10 minutes later, Admiral Kresh stood in the Luna Command Center, his massive frame dwarfed by the scale of human military preparation surrounding him. His 4 eyes moved constantly as he tried to process the scope of the installations visible through the transparent aluminum windows. "This is impossible," Kresh said through his translation device. "Our surveys of this system showed no major installations. These facilities would have taken centuries to build." Grant gestured toward the tactical displays showing human construction efforts across the solar system. "Admiral, your surveys showed exactly what we wanted them to show. We've been building these defenses for 60 years, since the day we first detected your monitoring stations at the edge of our space." Kresh's massive head turned to stare at her. "You knew we were watching?" "Of course we knew. Did you think a species capable of developing faster than light travel couldn't detect your sensor drones? We've been tracking Galactic Council activities since before your people knew we existed." The alien admiral studied the displays showing the movement of human fleets throughout the solar system. Ships emerged from concealment in numbers that made his original force look like a scouting party. "How many vessels do you possess?" "Enough," Grant replied. "Admiral, your people made a critical error in their intelligence assessment. You saw primitive ships and assumed primitive thinking. You detected limited weapons and assumed limited capability. You observed defensive behavior and assumed we were prey. Grant activated a holographic display showing the battle from multiple angles. What happened to your fleet wasn't a lucky victory or desperate resistance. It was a carefully planned demonstration designed to test your capabilities while revealing as little as possible about ours. Demonstration? We needed to know how. Your ships moved, how your weapons functioned, how your commanders thought. Every shot fired, every maneuver executed, every tactical decision made by your forces has been analyzed and integrated into our combat systems. Kresh watched as the hologram showed human fighters dissecting his fleet with surgical precision. Your weapons violate several laws of physics. They violate your understanding of physics, Grant corrected. Humanity has had different priorities in our scientific development. While your people focused on conventional energy manipulation and faster-than-light travel, we focused on understanding the fundamental forces that hold reality together. The display shifted to show Earth's hidden installations coming online. For 60 years, every human scientist, every engineer, every industrial facility has been working toward a single goal, ensuring that if our species was ever threatened with extinction, we would not only survive but eliminate the threat permanently. Kresh's translation device struggled with the concept as Grant continued. Your Galactic Council has maintained order through superior firepower and intimidation. That works against species who think like you do. It doesn't work against species who think like us. What do you mean? Grant smiled, but the expression carried no warmth. Admiral, when humans are threatened, we don't just defend. We hunt, and we don't stop hunting until the threat is completely eliminated. The command center's alarms began sounding as deep space sensors detected new arrivals at the edge of the system. Grant turned to her tactical displays as Lieutenant Davis provided the report. Ma'am, massive energy signature detected beyond Pluto's orbit. Configuration matches intelligence estimates for their world-ender weapon. Grant nodded, having expected this development. Time for the aliens to learn that bringing their ultimate weapon into our solar system was the worst mistake they could have made. She turned back to Admiral Kresh, whose 4 eyes were wide with growing comprehension. Admiral, your people are about to discover why attacking Earth means total annihilation. It's not because we're the strongest or the most advanced. It's because we're the most thorough. Grant activated communication systems that reach beyond the Sol system, connecting to installations the Galactic Council had never detected. All deep strike forces, this is Luna Command. The enemy has brought their primary asset into our engagement zone. Operation Total War is now authorized. As the command went out, Admiral Kresh realized that everything his people thought they knew about warfare was about to become obsolete. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the deepest chambers of their orbital station, where the massive crystalline walls could contain even the most devastating revelations. Council leader Vorth's tentacles moved in agitated patterns as he reviewed the final transmission from Admiral Kresh's fleet, received moments before all communication ceased. Abort all operations against Earth, the Admiral's desperate voice echoed through the chamber. We have awakened something terrible. The humans are not what they appear to be. Their technology surpasses ours in ways we cannot comprehend. Withdraw all forces immediately. Science Coordinator Thex manipulated holographic displays showing the last sensor readings from the destroyed fleet. The data makes no sense. According to our instruments, entire ships simply stopped existing. No debris, no energy signatures. No trace that they were ever constructed. Defense Coordinator Quinn paced nervously around the central display. 300 of our most advanced warships cannot be destroyed without a trace. Either our sensors malfunctioned or Admiral Kresh has been compromised by human psychological warfare. Vorth's ancient mind processed the possibilities with the cold logic that had maintained galactic order for 2 millennia. The Galactic Council had faced challenges before, species that had initially resisted integration into the galactic hierarchy. In every case, superior firepower and overwhelming numbers had resolved the situation. Military Advisor Kresh was one of our most experienced commanders, Vorth stated. His tactical record spans 4 centuries of successful operations. He would not send such a message unless he genuinely believed his forces were overmatched. Trade Representatives Lix activated economic projections showing the cost of the failed expedition. The financial loss is staggering but manageable. What concerns me more are the reports from our commercial monitoring stations. Human trade networks have expanded into 63 systems since our attack began. They're not acting like a species under assault. Cultural analyst Marin brought up intelligence reports gathered from species that had recent contact with human traders. Several civilizations report that human representatives warned them about impending conflict between humanity and the Galactic Council. The humans advised these species to avoid council space for their own safety. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If the humans had known about the Council's military response before it was launched, it suggested intelligence capabilities that rivaled or exceeded their own. How could they have known about our classified military operations? Quinn demanded. The same way they knew about our monitoring stations, Dex replied grimly. We may have been observing a species that was observing us in return. Vorth's tentacles stilled as he reached a decision that would define the next phase of galactic history. Contact the Keeper of the World Ender, deploy our ultimate weapon to the human home system. Several council members recoiled at the suggestion. The World Ender had been constructed as a weapon of absolute last resort, capable of igniting stars or cracking planets down to their molten cores. It had been used only twice in galactic history, both times to eliminate species that posed existential threats to galactic civilization. Council leader, Marin protested. The World Ender has never been deployed against a species that has not first attempted to conquer other civilizations. The humans have shown no expansionist military ambitions beyond their own territorial claims. They have defied Council authority and destroyed our expeditionary force, Vorth replied. If we allow such actions to go unpunished, every species in the galaxy will believe they can challenge our leadership. Ambassador Rillick activated communication systems connecting to the most heavily defended installation in galactic space. Destroyer? Prime, this is the Galactic Council. You are authorized to deploy the World Ender to the Sol System. Target, the third planet, designated Earth. The response came through speakers that had been designed to contain sounds too terrible for most species to hear safely. Destroyer Prime spoke in harmonics that resonated through bone and crystal alike, his voice carrying the weight of civilizations that no longer existed. I acknowledge the authorization. The World Ender will arrive at the target system in 4 standard days. Planetary sterilization will commence upon arrival. As the connection closed, Trade Representatives Lix brought up projections showing the economic aftermath of Earth's destruction. The elimination of human trade networks will destabilize markets across 40 systems. Recovery could take decades. Recovery is preferable to allowing a rogue species to challenge the fundamental order of galactic civilization, Vorth declared. The humans will serve as an example to others who might consider defying Council authority. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, human intelligence networks intercepted the Council's communications with the same ease they had been monitoring galactic traffic for decades. Deep beneath Earth's Pacific Ocean, Dr. Emma Walsh reviewed the translated conversations while her xenobiology team analyzed tissue samples from captured alien prisoners. The World Ender is confirmed to be their primary planet-killing weapon, Walsh reported to the assembled commanders. Based on captured technical specifications, it's essentially a mobile star killer, capable of igniting our sun or cracking Earth's crust. General Robert Hayes studied the tactical implications while reviewing humanity's response options. How long do we have? 4 days until arrival, based on their fastest recorded travel speeds. However, our deep space monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures moving through hyperspace approximately 6 hours ago. The actual device may already be in transit. Hayes activated secure communication links to military installations across human space. All commands, this is Strategic Command. The enemy has escalated to planet killer weapons. Operation Final Solution is now authorized. Throughout the solar system, installations that had remained hidden even during the previous battle began revealing themselves. The asteroid series split open like an egg, revealing construction facilities that had been building weapons for 30 years. The rings of Saturn realigned themselves into perfect geometric patterns, each ice fragment containing sensors and weapon systems. Most significantly, deep space monitoring stations that the aliens had never detected began broadcasting on frequencies that reached beyond the galaxy itself. The signals carried mathematical progressions that served as activation codes for systems that had been placed in distant star systems over decades of secret exploration. Dr. Walsh reviewed the final intelligence reports while human fleets moved into positions that would have been impossible if their true capabilities had been known. General, there's something else. Our analysis of Galactic Council psychology suggests they view the world-ender deployment as their ultimate response. They believe that nothing can survive its attack. Are they correct? Walsh smiled as she activated displays showing Earth's true defensive capabilities. They're about to discover that their ultimate weapon is exactly what we needed to demonstrate the difference between their species and ours. Hayes studied the tactical displays showing human forces positioning throughout the solar system. Explain. General. The Galactic Council thinks in terms of overwhelming force and technological superiority. They deploy their most powerful weapon and expect instant victory. Humans think differently. How so? We prepare for the enemy's best possible move, then we prepare for something better than that. The World Ender isn't their ultimate weapon, General. It's our ultimate opportunity. As human forces continued their deployments, Admiral Kresh sat in his detention cell on Luna, watching through reinforced windows as the true scope of human preparation revealed itself. The aliens had brought their most powerful weapon to the one place in the universe where humanity was most prepared to turn it against them. The war that was about to begin would not be decided by who had the stronger weapons or the larger fleets. It would be decided by who had thought furthest ahead, and Admiral Kresh was beginning to understand that humans had been thinking about this war since before his people knew they existed. The World Ender emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like a metallic moon given purpose and malevolence. Its surface bristled with weapons that had cracked the cores of 47 worlds, while its central chamber housed the Starkiller that had ignited 3 suns and sterilized entire solar systems. Destroyer Prime stood in the command nexus at the heart of the massive construct, his ancient consciousness interfacing directly with systems that had been refined through millennia of planetary destruction. In his memory banks lay the final moments of civilizations that had dared to challenge galactic order, their last transmissions preserved as trophies of absolute power. The human system spread before him appeared, exactly as intelligence reports had described, a primitive arrangement of worlds orbiting an ordinary star, defended by creatures barely capable of interstellar flight. His sensors detected the debris field where Admiral Kresh's fleet had met its end, but Destroyer Prime dismissed the battle as irrelevant. Whatever weapons the humans possessed, they would prove useless against the World Ender's defenses. Beginning planetary scan, announced the World Ender's artificial intelligence, its voice echoing through chambers lined with the crystallized remains of extinct species. Target confirmed, 3rd planet, oxygen, nitrogen atmosphere, population, approximately 8 billion sentient beings. Destroyer Prime reviewed the energy readings from the human homeworld while his weapon systems powered up. The planet showed unusual electromagnetic signatures, but nothing that suggested technology capable of threatening his installation. Commence charging sequence for Starkiller primary weapon, he commanded. Time to ignition, 37 minutes. The World Ender's massive engines moved it deeper into the system, following a trajectory that would position the weapon perfectly to ignite the human sun. As the Starkiller reached critical charge levels, Destroyer Prime opened communication channels to broadcast humanity's final moments across the galaxy. Species designation, human, his transmission began, carried on frequencies that would reach every civilized world within 50 light-years. You have defied the Galactic Council and destroyed Council military assets. Your civilization is hereby sentenced to complete sterilization. Your star will be ignited in 34 minutes. Your species will serve as an example to others who might consider challenging galactic authority. For several minutes, only silence answered the transmission. Then a single human voice responded, speaking in the same calm tone that had marked all their communications. "Destroyer Prime of the World Ender," the human said, and something in his voice made the ancient being pause. "This is Commander Lisa. Grant of the Earth Defense Force, your message has been received. Before you proceed with your attack, we have something to show you." The tactical display around Destroyer Prime began filling with new contacts as human ships emerged from concealment throughout the solar system. But these were not the small fighters and defensive platforms he had expected. These were vessels that dwarfed even the World Ender, their hulls bearing weapon configurations that defied every principle of galactic military engineering. "Impossible," Destroyer Prime muttered as his sensors tried to process what they were detecting. "These installations would require centuries to construct." Grant's voice carried a note of satisfaction. "Destroyer Prime, meet Project Prometheus, humanity's real defense fleet." The human ships moved with coordinated precision that spoke of decades of training and preparation. More alarming, they approached the World Ender from directions that should have been impossible, their engines bending space-time in ways that violated several fundamental laws of physics. "Your species cannot possess such technology," Destroyer Prime declared, though uncertainty colored his ancient confidence. "Our intelligence reports indicate primitive development levels." "Your intelligence reports showed you exactly what we wanted you to see," Grant replied. "Destroyer Prime, you're looking at 60 years of preparation for this exact moment. Every human scientist, every engineer, every factory worker has been building toward the day when someone would try to destroy our world." The World Ender's weapon systems activated automatically as proximity alarms began sounding throughout the massive construct. The human ships had moved close enough to engage, yet Destroyer Prime's sensors could not lock onto them properly. Their hulls seemed to phase in and out of normal space, making targeting calculations impossible. "Beginning defensive fire," the World Ender's artificial intelligence announced, unleashing energy beams that could vaporize asteroids. The weapons struck empty space where the human ships had been moments before, their targets having simply stepped sideways through dimensions that Destroyer Prime had not known existed. "Starkiller weapon at 90% charge," the AI reported. 17 minutes to solar ignition. Destroyer Prime focused on completing his mission while his defensive systems engaged the human fleet. The World Ender had survived countless battles through overwhelming firepower and impenetrable shielding. No weapon in galactic history had ever penetrated its defenses. The first human attack came not as an energy beam or projectile, but as something far more terrifying. Space itself began to twist around the World Ender, reality bending inward like fabric being pulled into a drain. Destroyer Prime felt his massive construct being drawn toward a point of impossible gravity that had appeared directly beneath his weapon platform. "Impossible," he whispered as his instruments registered readings that violated everything he understood about physics. "Artificial singularity generation requires energy outputs that exceed the capacity of any known technology." Grant's voice cut through the chaos of alarms and defensive fire. "Destroyer Prime, you're thinking like the Galactic Council. You see? Weapons as tools for destroying things. Humans see weapons as tools for changing the fundamental nature of reality itself." The World Ender's engines strained against the artificial gravity well while Destroyer Prime tried to process what was happening. His Starkiller weapon, designed to ignite suns, was being pulled apart by forces that existed outside normal space-time. "We've been watching your people for 60 years, Grant continued as more human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the system. "We've studied your technology, analyzed your tactics, and prepared countermeasures for every weapon in your arsenal, including that one." The World Ender's primary weapon began to buckle under gravitational forces that should not have been possible to generate. Destroyer Prime realized with growing horror that the humans were not trying to destroy his installation. They were trying to capture it. Starkiller weapon malfunction, the AI reported. Energy cascade building toward critical levels. Estimated. Time to containment failure, 12 minutes. Destroyer Prime activated emergency protocols, attempting to jettison the Starkiller before its energy could tear his installation apart. But the human gravity manipulation had locked the weapon in place, turning the World Ender's ultimate power source into a contained explosion waiting to happen. "You cannot control Starkiller energies," Destroyer Prime declared. "The release will destroy your entire system. Will it?" Grant asked, and now her voice carried the confidence of absolute certainty. "Destroyer Prime, meet humanity's real achievement. We don't just build weapons. We build weapons that turn other weapons into our weapons." Around the World Ender, massive human installations that had been disguised as asteroids began revealing their true purpose. Instead of weapons platforms, they were energy collection arrays designed to absorb and redirect the exact type of energy that Starkiller weapons produced. Destroyer Prime watched in disbelief as his ultimate weapon was systematically converted into the power source for humanity's counterattack. The energy that should have ignited Earth's sun was being channeled through dimensional rifts that opened like wounds in space itself. "Dimensional breach confirmed," reported human technicians whose voices carried across open communication channels. Targeting coordinates locked on all Galactic Council primary installations. Through the rifts, Destroyer Prime could see impossible distances compressed into viewable space. Every major Galactic Council world, every fleet base, every administrative center hung suspended in the dimensional windows like targets in a shooting gallery. "This is not possible," he said, though the evidence surrounded him. "Dimensional manipulation on this scale would require the energy output of an entire star." "It does," Grant agreed. "Fortunately, you brought us exactly the power source we needed." The World Ender's Starkiller weapon reached critical failure, its contained energies erupting in a cascade that should have sterilized the Sol system. Instead, the explosion was captured, channeled, and redirected through the dimensional rifts toward every Galactic Council installation simultaneously. Destroyer Prime felt his ancient consciousness expanding as the energies tore through him, and in his final moments he understood the true scope of human preparation. This had never been about defending Earth. This had been about using the Council's own ultimate weapon to eliminate them completely. Across the galaxy, Galactic Council installations simply ceased to exist as Starkiller energies reached through dimensional space to touch every world. Every fleet, every outpost that had ever threatened humanity. The species that had maintained galactic order for 2 millennia discovered in their final moments that they had brought about their own extinction. On Earth, Commander Grant watched the dimensional rifts close as the last traces of Galactic Council civilization faded from the galaxy. Around her, human fleets emerged from hiding places that spanned dozens of star systems, revealing the true scope of humanity's expansion. "All stations report successful elimination of primary targets," came reports from across human space. "Galactic Council military assets have been neutralized. Civilian populations on Council worlds are requesting immediate humanitarian assistance." Grant activated communication systems that reached every inhabited world in the galaxy. "This is Commander Lisa Grant of the United Earth Defense Force. The Galactic Council's reign of terror has ended. Humanity extends protection to all species that choose peaceful coexistence. Any civilization that chooses predation will face the same fate as the Council." She paused, looking out at the stars that now belonged to a galaxy where no species would ever again face extinction for refusing to bow to tyrants. "The galaxy is free. Use that freedom wisely." As human ships moved to establish aid stations throughout former Council space, the scattered species of the galaxy received a simple message that would define the next era of galactic civilization. "Earth protects those who cannot protect themselves. Earth destroys those who prey upon others. Choose your path accordingly." The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of human protection had begun, and every species in the galaxy now understood why attacking Earth had always meant total annihilation.